Welcome back to Shutter Magazine. My name is Dustin Lucas, and today I'm going to talk about how to sharpen your image. Let's start with opening up the image in Photoshop and see with how much work we have to do. This tutorial is going to go over reducing noise, the input or capture sharpening that's usually caused by your anti-aliasing filter. Could be caused by the softness of your lens, how you're importing the images from your camera into the computer. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play with softening the image, but input and capture sharpening is very important to get that tack sharp image back. And last, it's going to be your output sharpening, whether you're going to go to your blog and post it online, or you're going to make a print or even a canvas print. Different printing medias matter for output sharpening. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this image, and we're going to duplicate the layer. By doing that, that's going to be Option Command J, and I'm just going to call this reduce noise. And the reason why I'm using separate layers is so that way it's a non-destructive edit. The importance of that is I can always turn on and off a layer or discard it, and I never manipulate my base layer. So what I'm going to do is with that reduce noise layer made, I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise. And what you can do is you can zoom in on where your sharp areas are in the image, because most of your edges are the ones that are going to be most affected in the image itself. So that's where the noise will be either enhanced. And like I talk about, if you sharpen your image before reducing the noise, all you're doing is enhancing that distractive noise. And noise, unlike film grain, is a much more distracting element in the photograph. And so what you can do is you can zoom in. It's going to show you at a 100% window here, and you can click on the image and it will remove the reduce noise effect. And I have it at I'm going to put it to about a strength of 4, just so some of that noise kind of goes away. She doesn't have a whole lot on her face. She's had the beauty retouching and skin smoothing, so this is sort of getting rid of any of that color noise. I'm going to go ahead and at this level go ahead and click OK. And with that, I'm going to go ahead now and merge visible. And the importance of merging visible is if you have other layers that are turned off, it's only going to merge the layers that you're using. And it also won't make your file as large in compressing those unused files. And you can discard them at the end. So next what we're going to do is we're going to start with the input sharpening. That's again Option Command J. We're going to name this layer Pre-Sharpen. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to double click on this layer, and we have to change the layer styles. First thing we're going to change is the blending mode. We're going to put that to luminosity. We're going to put the opacity to 66%. And we're going to go down here to the blend if areas, and we're going to adjust these values. These different tonal values determine where from black to white in this midtone, all the gray between, how this layer is going to affect the underlying layer, and also how the filters and things are going to affect the current layer I'm doing them to. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this layer and the underlying layer to the same settings. So I'm going to set the black point to 75. And how I'm splitting these is holding the Option button, and I'm clicking on one of the sliders and dragging it over. So with continuing to hold the Option button, I can select each slider individually and adjust them as I need to. 20 and 75 is going to be the black values, and 185 and 235 is going to be the white values. And so I'm going to move those down. This is probably the most tedious part of the process, to where you're not really seeing the effect, but it will reveal itself later through the demo. So I'm going to drop this down to 75, throw this up to 20, and now we're ready to move on. So we're going to click OK. Our next step is going to be, we're going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And again, with the squares, you can click on a pretty heavy detail in the image and see how it's affecting it at 100%. Now I'm going to put the amount to 300%. I'm going to put the radius to 0.8, and I'm going to put the threshold to 0. Now this is a very aggressive sharpening effect on this image. And don't worry, it's going to be dialed back with a layer mask as well as dialing back the opacity, but we need to sort of over sharpen at this point in order to blend it in with the current sort of unsharpened at capture image. So I'm going to go ahead and do, with my adjustments made, my settings, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we've sharpened, basically have sharpened for the input or the capture sharpening. And it's kind of created this really, this sort of overly sharp, too much clarity in the image overall. And so what we need to do is dial that back. And that's when it starts to come into the creative or the content sharpening, to where you start to put back the subjective editing back into the image, where you're choosing how much sharpening and what decisions to make. So the next adjustment we're going to do is we're going to go to image, we're going to go to calculations. And what calculations is going to help us do, it's going to help us create a sort of a selection for our layer mask when we start doing the next process, because we need to start masking out what parts of the image we want to be sharp and what parts we don't need. And mostly we're going to be sharpening the edges of the image. So what we're going to do with these settings is we're going to choose the pre-sharpen layer to be selected for source 1 and source 2. Your top channel needs to be red, but the lower channel needs to be green. We're attacking two separate channels. We're going to put the blending mode to pin light, and you're going to see it's going to really lighten up, kind of gray out our image, much similar to the high pass filter, but not quite. We're going to put the opacity is going to stay at 100%. And our blending mode's at pin light, so we're going to go ahead and click OK. Then we're going to go to Filter, Stylize, Find Edges. So this is going to turn our image almost into an illustration. And the next step we need to do, since you're seeing all the black areas where all the edges are, what we need to do is invert it to almost think about this image as now a mask. So I'm going to go ahead and invert the image, so all the white parts of the image they're going to reveal this effect to the image, which is sort of going to just sharpen all of the edges in our image. You can see some of the sky and some of the trees in the background are going to be sharpened as well, and we can tackle that problem later. But what we're going to do now is do a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And the purpose of this is it sort of gives not so much of a feathering effect to these edges, but it doesn't make them, it doesn't make the pixels so sharp to where it looks jagged at the edges. Because remember, this is going to be for a selection, and we're kind of creating our mask here. So I'm going to go ahead, let me go back one step. It looks like it auto included blur. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to put this to 0.8, a very low value of blur. But you're seeing it's just enough to where it's taking those sharp, tack sharp edges and almost pixelated edges, and it's softening them. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so next thing I need to do is go to my channels palette. You're going to notice sort of two alpha channels here in mine. This is because I've done sharpening on this prior to this demo. I'm going to go ahead and just throw out this first one. But the one that's selected, this fifth channel that's on here is the one that you're going to want to select, and you're going to want to hold Command and click on it in order for it to just select this channel. And you see that my selection is only showing on those edges or those white areas. What I'm going to do is go back to layers, and now you're looking at the image, and you're wondering, well, where'd the girl go? What I do with my selection is I click back on my layer. The inverted edges, find edges filter layer is completely gone, and now you're back to your image layer with a selection, which is perfect. So now what we're ready to do is we're ready to make a layer mask. So by clicking on your layer mask button at the bottom of your layers palette, it's going to create a mask where you had your selection. And if I turn it on and off, you're seeing just those edges come into play. So as far as your last step, what we need to do is with this turned back on, what we need to do is we need to do one last sharpen. So sharpen, unsharp mask. This is going to be a less aggressive. As you can see, the image is really starting to get gritty. We're going to do the amount to 200%, the radius to 0.6, and we're going to put the threshold to 1. And you're seeing how much of a difference that's making. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm turning this layer on and off, and it's really creating a lot of distraction with her hair, which we can mask out at the end. That's not a problem. But with the opacity, what you have the ability to do is turn that opacity down to reduce the amount of sharpening. And that's going to be very important when you're wanting to reduce the sharpening. Instead of going and doing another sort of another adjustment with the sharpening altogether, you can just reduce the opacity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom back out to my original image, and I'm going to work on the output sharpening. This is going to be very important for the type of media or for what purpose you're going to use this image for. So again, we're going to duplicate the layer, Option Command J. We're going to call it output just to designate that's what it's for. And what we're going to do, we're going to start out with, we're going to have to do make some layer style adjustments. So by double clicking the output layer, we're going to leave the blending mode and the opacity alone for now. But we're going to go down and we're going to change the blend if settings. And so what we need to do is we need to blend if, change the black sliders on the blend if on the underlying layer to 10 and 20. So underlying layer, black sliders, I'm holding Option and I'm dragging my second value to 20 and the first value to 10. And on this layer, I'm going to drag the white markers to 230 and 250. And with those settings done, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to again go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. I'm going to put the amount to 320. The radius stays at 0.6 and the threshold is going to be at 4. And you can see it's doing kind of it's sharpening just a bit. But this layer will work with your pre-sharpened layer in order to have your image totally sharp. What you need to go to next is immediately go to Edit, Fade Unsharp Mask, put the opacity down to 70%, and put the mode to luminosity. With that set, I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to set the layer's opacity to 50%. I'm going to set the blending mode to overlay. And my image is going to get very dramatic. And I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And what that's allowing me to do is it's allowing me to see what part of the edges I'm going to allow this effect. So what I'm looking at here is the best way to work with high pass filter is to turn it all the way down and then start to raise it until you start to see detail or edges. And so usually 1 pixel on digital images is usually a good starting point. You don't want to have anything that's not really an edge on her face to be sharp. And as you start to bring this up and make it more aggressive, you're seeing a lot more the pores start to sharpen, and different sort of not so flattering features on the face start to sharpen. This high pass is really important because yes, you can turn down the opacity, but you don't want to turn down the opacity on the edges. You would want to turn down the opacity if you were to accidentally over sharpen some of these other facial features. And so what I'm going to do is keep it around 1 pixel. That's enough for this image. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that's completed the input and the output sharpening. Now with zoomed in at 100%, we're going to look at this image, and we're going to make some adjustments. Maybe lower the output sharpening down to 40%. This would be the point to where you would export the image as a JPEG, post it on your blog, see what it looks like, and adjust the image from there. The input sharpening shouldn't change too much once you select that value. It's mostly your output sharpening that you're going to be adjusting. But real quick, what you can do is you can create a group, rename it Sharpening, or whatever's most identifiable for you. You can drag both these layers into that group, and what you can do is create a layer mask for both of those. Say if we want to reduce some of the sharpness on the hair, we can grab our brush tool by clicking the letter B. We can turn the opacity down maybe 25%. We have the hardness at 0%. and we're going to mask out, so we need to choose black. And what we can do is we can go into the hair and we can start to reduce some of the sharpening on the hair, which I think is a very good idea. We don't want to highlight some of those frayed hairs. And what that'll do is that'll leave most of our sharpness and kind of keep our eye on her where it should be. And so you can grab some of the other textures of the skin in different areas, and you can reduce some of the noise to where the majority of it is going to sort of the lips and the eyes. And that concludes this tutorial. If you guys have any questions at all, please leave them on the website. I'd be more than happy to answer any of those. And that concludes this tutorial. Thank you.